I think foreign countries could find it difficult to effectively regulate Facebook, Libra, or Calibra. It isn't clear the Federal Reserve or other U.S. regulators have the authority to regulate you. And yesterday, the Swiss regulator that you're saying would regulate you actually said that it has never been contacted by Facebook about this project. So, Mr. Marcus, you responded to a request by members of this committee for a moratorium on your activities by stating that you would continue to work with regulators before going forward. But if the regulators lack the authority to adequately oversee you, how can you work with them to resolve concerns? Will you stop kind of dancing around this question and commit here in this committee before the duly elected representatives of the American people to a moratorium until Congress enacts an appropriate legal framework to ensure that Libra and Calibra do what you claim it is intended to do, which is to serve the public's good? Let me just say that we are all in support of innovation. It's not one side of the aisle versus another side of the aisle. But if you talk to any member on this committee, they will know nothing about Libra, they will know nothing about Calibra, they will know nothing about how it is organized, they will know nothing about the role that Facebook is going to play in this big association that now has 28 companies and looking to get 100 companies. And so, despite the fact that we all support innovation and we all understand what is important for our economy to grow and for our development and for the future of this country, we need to be on top of and understand something as massive as this project. And that does not say we don't support innovation. With that, I will turn to the gentleman. Well, yes, if he has time to answer. Please, go right ahead.
Chairwoman, I agree with you that this needs to be analyzed, understood, and the proper oversight needs to be set up before Libra can launch. And this is in this spirit that we released a white paper very early before any launch so that we could have the time to engage with all of the proper regulators and central banks and lawmakers to ensure that we will get this right. And this is my commitment to you, Chairwoman. We will take the time to get this right.
Thank you very much. The gentleman from North Carolina, Ranking Member Mr. McHenry, is recognized for 5 minutes.
So I want to keep this simple. So, Mr. Marcus, I've read your white paper. I understand the nature of digital currency and digital technology. What is a Libra?
Congressman, Libra is a digital currency, a reserve-backed digital currency.
Is that a security?
We don't believe it is, Congressman.
Is it a commodity?
Congressman, based on current U.S. law, I believe it might be a commodity, but we see it as a payment tool.
Is it an exchange-traded fund?
It is not, Congressman.
Okay, so when you say that, so it's none of the above in any pure form, like other digital currencies, correct?
Congressman, it is designed to be a payment tool.
A payment tool. Okay, so if it's none of the above in our current regulatory structure, what I'm really getting at is how do you comply with regulations?
Congressman, the way that we comply with regulations is in a number of ways. First, as far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, it's registered as a money services business with Treasury and with FinCEN. It is applying and has received a number of state licenses and will operate the same way that other wallets operate. As far as
that's Calibra. I'm asking about Libra.
So as far as the Libra Association is concerned, these are active conversations we're having, notably with the working group of the G7, as well as FINMA, which is the Swiss financial regulator.
Okay, so there's tension between the notion of a decentralized currency or something decentralized and ultimately privacy and ultimately anti-money laundering and know your customer elements. These things stand in conflict with one another and very difficult things to resolve. In your white paper, you say after 5 years, there'll be a transition point. And you will go from a permissioned-based to a permissionless system. Post-transition, how do you reconcile the need for controls which allow you to comply with anti-money laundering and KYC, know your customer regulations, with that decentralized notion of a fully decentralized digital currency?
It's a very good question, Congressman. The way that this will work is that the association will still have the ability to set the rules when it comes to anti-money laundering programs, CFT and KYC requirements for the network. What we expect, even when the network transitions to permissionless without getting lost in the weeds, is that the vast majority of validators will likely be the ones providing services, so likely larger companies.
So you're saying in the nature of the wallet, that's how you get to anti-money laundering, know your customer, not the nature of the digital currency. So going to a permissioned, going from permissioned system with these nodes, ultimately 100, to a permissionless system, you're saying it's not going to be in the nature of that technology of a Libra, it'll be in the nature of the wallets on either side of this?
That is correct, Congressman, but on top of that, the Libra Association will continue to have an AML program and will still be under the supervision of FinCEN.
Okay, so getting into that question of anti-money laundering provisions and complying with FinCEN, is your view that you're going to be like Western Union, or is it going to be your view that you're more like your former employer PayPal?
Congressman, I believe that it depends about the entities you're talking about. As far as the wallets are concerned, it will definitely be more like the PayPal types of businesses that operates in the payments space. And as far as the Libra Association is concerned, that is the conversation we're having because—
So is this your view, the development internally at Facebook, is for you to be a competitor to Alipay and to WePay?
Congressman, yes.
And to be a competitor to Venmo and PayPal, which are basically the same.
So yes, we have a number of wallets that are working with us on the network side, but that will compete on the wallet side on the network.
Will that consumer data be kept separate or a part of the Calibra data collected from consumers? Will that be a part of Facebook's overall knowledge of consumers, or will it be separate and distinct?
No, Congressman, we will make strong commitment to keep that data separated from social data.
Separate and distinct.
Yes.
Final question here. So if you're seeking to be a competitor to Alipay and to WeChat, why are you doing this in Switzerland? And why are you using a basket of currencies? Why not the good old American dollar? And to bring down the transaction costs, which is seemingly the ultimate goal here.
Congressman, first, I want to say that the choice of Switzerland has nothing to do about evading responsibilities or oversight. The goal of Switzerland is to home this Libra Association in an international place that is the home of WTO.
Okay, skip beyond that.
And so that's really why. The second thing is, for the same reason, we would like for Libra to be a digital global currency, and as a result to be one unit of digital currency for the whole world. And this is why we believe it was the right approach.
Thank you.
The gentlewoman from New York, Mrs. Maloney, who is also the chair for the Subcommittee on Investor Protection, Entrepreneurship and Capital Markets, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Marcus, as you can see, there are a lot of questions about this project. It's big and very bold. Some would say it's too bold. The chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jay Powell, was in here just last week saying that he thinks it could be a systemic risk. The former chairman of the CFTC, Gary Gensler, is going to testify later that he believes it should be covered by the Investment Company Act. So we have a lot of concerns and a lot of questions, and I take it that it's a no to the chairwoman's question about requesting a moratorium on Libra until policymakers can figure out how to handle it. Was that a yes or no to her question when she called for a moratorium?
Congresswoman, the commitment is that we will not launch until we have addressed all concerns fully and have the proper
I take that as a no.
approval.
Okay, so what I want to ask you, will you commit right here in this hearing room to walk before you run? Will you commit to doing a small pilot program for Libra First, limited to no more than 1 million users and overseen by the Federal Reserve and the SEC. Will you commit to that?
Congresswoman, the steps we have taken, and this is the reason why we announced the white paper and the plans instead of launching and then figuring it out after, which is what happens sometimes with technology products, most often actually. In this very case, we are deliberate about taking the time to get this right. And
But that's seriously, in all due respect, that's not what I asked you. And given the lack of trust of people have in Facebook, you've breached the trust of users over and over again. Just last week, you were reportedly fined $5 billion for selling your users' private data without their knowledge or permission. So I would like to ask you again, will you commit to walking before you run? Because if you go ahead and launch Libra without doing a pilot program first, there are too many risks. The Libra Reserve could be managing too much money, which could make it systemic. Too much money could be pulled out of banks in order to buy Libra, which former FDIC Chair Sheila Bair has written about and warned about. So the risks are very great. Now, personally, this is only my own personal belief, I don't think you should launch Libra at all, because the creation of a new currency is a core government function and should be left to democratically accountable institutions that are accountable to the American people. But at the very least, you should agree to do this small pilot program first, fully overseen by you and the Federal Reserve and the SEC. I think that's a modest request. So will you commit right now to doing a small pilot program first, yes or no?
Congresswoman, we will continue to engage with regulators and the working group at the G7 that is notably looking after the issues that you raised to ensure that however we launch this, it is responsibly and it is with the appropriate oversight and in a very responsible way. You have my commitment on that.
Well, if you will not commit to testing this out as a pilot program first, I think it's a reasonable request, then I think that Congress should seriously consider stopping this project from moving forward. Now, there's a lot of concern about Facebook. A lot of people think that it's really become too powerful, that it's become a monopoly. And now you're telling us that Facebook's digital wallet for Libra, called Calibra, will be the only wallet that can be embedded into WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. Given how dominant these two apps are, I think that raises serious concerns about market concentration and potentially monopoly concerns. So will you commit to allowing third-party wallets on WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger?
Congresswoman, may I answer the one point about what you said earlier? I just want to address it really quick, which is that the current system is really not working for people and for way too many people, and others are leading and plowing ahead, and I believe that if we
Please, sir, would you answer my question? I get to ask the questions in this committee. And will you commit to allowing the third-party wallets on WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger? Yes or no? It's a simple question. Yes or no?
Congresswoman, other wallets are going to actually be interoperable with the Calibra wallets that will be integrated in WhatsApp.
So do you believe in competition and market access? If you believed in it, then you would allow them to be embedded also, third-party. Will you allow it?
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank you.
The gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Wagner, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm concerned that a 2020 launch date demonstrates deep insensitivities around how Libra could impact U.S. national security, the global financial system, the privacy of people across the globe, criminal activity, and international human rights. Mr. Marcus, I have a number of questions, so let's try and move as expeditiously as possible. Are you taking any steps to ensure that the dollar is not overtaken as the leading international currency that undergirds global economic stability?
Yes, Congresswoman, and the first of many steps is that the dollar is most likely going to be the predominant part of the reserve.
It's
which is the full
58%, generally
reserve.
speaking. Euro about 19. I don't know what your numbers are in terms of.
Well, Congresswoman, the dollar will be one of the predominant currency backing Libra, and then the other part is really the engagement that we currently have with the G7 working group, with the Fed, and with the Financial Stability Board. We'll continue to engage in those conversations.
I serve as also as the vice-ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and I'm hoping to understand how the U.S. government could effectively implement sanctions if Libra were to take off. As you likely know, North Korea uses cryptocurrencies to evade our sanctions all the time. If the Treasury Department demanded the Libra Association blacklist certain Libra addresses in order to comply with U.S. sanctions, how would Libra respond?
Congresswoman, I want to make a strong point here because it's really important. Whether Libra launches or it doesn't launch, there will be other networks. There are other networks. There are other cryptocurrencies. And those are not coming here.
You're not suggesting that it's okay if others
No,
evade U.S. sanctions, and it's okay if Libra does.
I am absolutely not saying that, Congresswoman, and that's why I'm saying that we are here and we are engaging with FinCEN. The Libra Association will be also registered with FinCEN, and we will have strong AML KYC program as well as from all of the wallets operating here in the United States. Of course, full enforcement of sanctions and then some. So
Libra could have significant geopolitical implications. Frankly, from a human rights perspective, for instance, despotic leaders could ban Libra and penalize users. How are you approaching establishing appropriate human rights safeguards as you develop the Libra platform?
Congresswoman, I believe that one of the driving forces of the association being financial inclusion, we will have the right representatives around the table. And Orly.
Which specific organizations? Because your folks sure couldn't answer that to us yesterday when I asked. Which ones are you specifically working with to address potential human rights impact?
So we have Mercy Corps, Women Worlds Banking, and Kiva that are already founding members of the Libra Association, and there will be more organizations that have dedicated all of their lives and energy in addressing the very problems that you're raising.
I'm curious to understand how you think the Libra platform would interact with Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which prevents state and local law enforcement from protecting citizens from illicit activities. For instance, if Libra is explicitly being used to further a criminal act negotiated on Facebook Messenger.
Congresswoman, Section 230, as I understand it, is relating to the Facebook technology product, and we have the protections of Section 230. I don't believe that this applies to payments.
Terrorists and criminals use Facebook to fundraise, to recruit, and connect with buyers. Facebook's moderation just does not seem up to the task, and Libra could make it, I believe, even easier for these nefarious actors to move money. Before launching Libra and potentially compounding the situation, how will you be addressing the digital back markets that run rampant on the Facebook platform?
Congresswoman, the first way we will do that is ensuring that on the Calibra wallet, everyone who opens a Calibra account has to identify with a government-issued ID, and as a result, we will have strong identity and a full staffed team to address
My time is expired. I yield back to the chair. I have other questions I will submit for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Velasquez, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Marcos, we do not want to stifle innovation, but we do have a healthy dose of skepticism. So This is not Silicon Valley. You cannot work out problems as you go. So all those problems need to be resolved and worked out before you launch Libra. So for the third time on this side, I pose the question to you. Will you commit yourself to not launch Libra before all the concerns from the Federal Reserve and all the regulators are addressed? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Yes or no?
Absolutely, Congresswoman. And I want to reiterate this commitment that this was the spirit in which we announced early, and we will do what's right to address all
I just want a yes or no answer. Thank you. So, Mr. Marcos, we gave the Federal Reserve increased oversight over non-banks. We don't know yet what you are. If the STOC designated you a CFI, would you submit to enhanced oversight?
Congresswoman, I don't believe that
But you don't know what you are, so.
No, but Congresswoman, the Libra Association or Calibra have no plans to engage in banking activities. As far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, we will be active in the payment space, like many other non-banks are active in the payment space. But that said, we will, of course, comply with all regulations.
So we want to make sure that companies that did not fall into the normal bucket of regulatory authority could not threaten the U.S. financial system. So I would like to ask you, according to the Libra Association's white paper, members of the Libra Association will consist of geographically distributed and diverse businesses, not-for-profit and multilateral organizations and academic institutions. Sir, by what criteria were the initial members of the association chosen?
Thank you for your question, Congresswoman. The way that the initial members joined was as a result of a wide outreach. It's a combination of companies that can accelerate the acceptance and utility of Libra, like companies like Uber and Lyft and Spotify, that can accelerate the acceptance of Libra within current merchant networks like Visa and MasterCard, that can inform how to drive financial inclusion like Mercy Corps, Kiva, and Women World Banking. And now we are starting, the Libra Association is starting that phase of welcoming more members that will be even.
Okay, I hear you. You want to get to 100, right?
That is correct.
Yes. So if a member were to determine that they no longer wish to participate in the association, what is the process for withdrawal?
Congresswoman, at this stage, we're in the process, all of us, the 28 organizations, of ratifying the charter. And as a result of this process—
So you don't know yet?
No,
That's the answer.
as a result of this process, if members do not wish to participate, they can drop. And there will be a process on an ongoing basis for members that do not wish to participate.
So do you think a member's withdrawal could threaten the value of the Libra currency?
No, I don't believe that's the case, Congresswoman.
Mr. Marcos, according to the Libra Association's white paper, the Libra Association has a target launch of the first half of 2020. When you expect the association's charter to be finalized, and will the charter be available for review by regulators, lawmakers, and the public?
Absolutely, Congresswoman.
According to, this question was asked before, so I will yield back the balance of my time. Chair.
Thank you. Point of clarification, Mr. Marcus, did you commit to the moratorium to Ms. Velasquez?
Chairwoman, I committed to waiting.
Excuse me, I just need a yes or no.
Chairwoman, I just want to be precise. I committed to waiting for us to have all the appropriate regulatory approvals and have addressed all concerns before
Thank you very
moving
much.
forward.
Thank you very much. That's not a commitment. I wanted to clarify that. The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Hill, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank the chairwoman. Mr. Marcus, again, thank you for being here. I wanted to talk a little bit about what appears to be a core business element for Calibra, and that is the issue of remittances. The World Bank says that the single most important challenge in remittances around the world is lack of transparency and cost, and the average global cost of remittances is about 7%. So tell me what fees you'll be charging for moving money inside the Calibra system.
Congressman, the goal for Calibra is to charge very little or nothing at all for P2P transactions, so for person-to-person transactions. We're hoping that we can offer that part of the service for free.
And then therefore on B2B or B2C, you'd be charging something
There will likely
in Libra currency, fractional Libra currency.
There will likely be small merchant fees that will be competitive, very competitive with the current fees that are paid by merchants.
And inside the Calibra system, you'll earn revenue from advertising as well?
No, Congressman, no advertising in Calibra. The Calibra revenue streams, when we start working on that, which we haven't at all, and we don't plan to for a number of years, will likely be by offering a range of financial services in partnerships with existing financial institutions and banks.
And so in those remittances, which are so important to countries all over the world, we know what percentage of GDP remittances represent, particularly in Central America and Mexico. I think it's the third largest source of hard currency in Mexico, for example, 20% in Honduras. Both sides of that equation would be subject to KYC?
Yes, Congressman. On the Calibra wallet, you will not be able to open an account without having a proper KYC.
And one of the issues in the third world, obviously, is they don't have a stable currency and are subject to inflation, terrible inflation. I think I read a note that 94 countries, representing 48% of the world's population and 16% of world GDP, experience on a regular basis 10% or more inflation per year. So is it your view that Calibra wallet will have a more stable currency than their local currency, or more stable value, I should say, than their local currency?
Congressman, the way we've designed the reserve, and again, subject to proper oversight and review from the G7 working group and others, is to have a very stable, value retentive digital currency. So yes, it will be a very high quality digital currency in a number of countries that are currently receiving a lot of their income from abroad. They will now receive a lot of their income from abroad in a stable currency that will retain its value.
What do you think, though, about, obviously, many of those same third world countries and some larger than third world have very strict controls on foreign currency. They have currency controls. They have currency boards. They don't allow their consumers to take action outside their home currency. They don't allow their home currency to be taken out of the country. How does Libra plan on dealing with that?
Congressman, this is going to be a country-by-country answer. There are lots of countries that have the problems you highlighted and that don't have currency controls that we think we can address right away. And then for other countries, it will definitely be a country-by-country approach. The one thing I want to highlight, though, is the fact that any wallet, not only Calibra, any wallet that is actually built on top of the Libra network will be interoperable with one another, meaning that to provide the value that we intend to provide for so many people, we don't need to be the only wallet. And in certain regions, it will be other wallets, but they would still benefit from interoperability.
I thought that was an interesting conversation with my friend from New York about the exclusivity of the wallet, Calibra wallet at WhatsApp, for example. You do plan on having, and you have 100 members that aren't interested in Facebook having any more monopoly than they do now. So would you have Visa's debit credit system available as a wallet?
Congressman, we will have a number of other payment methods for commerce on the Facebook platform and Instagram as well, including debit, credit cards, other wallets. And as far as P2P payments, there will be more.
There will be competition on P2P payments, even on Facebook's application.
There will be on traditional currencies, the same way that in Messenger you can currently use debit cards to do P2P.
Yield back. Thank you, Chair.
The gentleman from New York, Mr. Meeks, who is also the chair for the Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Financial Institutions, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Marcus, thank you for your testimony. I can say with confidence that Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, and the entire subprime mortgage ecosystem did not set out to bring the global financial system to its knees. I can say with confidence that the legitimately brilliant minds and Nobel Prize winners, in fact, behind LTCM, did not set out to trigger the Asian financial crisis, but they nearly broke the global markets. And I can also say with confidence that the deregulation of the early 1980s and bankers did not set out to trigger the savings and loans crises, but it did. Not only that, they all typically founded their logic in innovation, expanding access to financial services, and arguments of inclusion. And yet, they all broke the system. And the people at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder systemically paid the heaviest price. So, you may be speaking earnestly when you tell us the lofty goals, but I was here in Congress when Secretary Paulson came to us and told us we were within days of a complete shutdown of the global financial system. Now, I don't expect you to understand what that was like, but I assure you it was absolutely terrifying and one of my worst moments in Congress. Now, I want America to remain a global leader in financial services and innovation, and I believe that we have regulators, et cetera, that are the best in the world. But let's do this. Let's assume that Facebook manages to get even just 10% of its current user base to the Facebook Libra wallet. Do you understand that that would absolutely make you a systemically risky financial institution, and that we would expect FSOC to designate you as such, and the Fed to create a special regulatory oversight program for Facebook accordingly? Would you agree to this?
Congressman, first of all, I want to recommit. We will actually—
Yes or no?
things.
Would you agree to this?
I do want to share that if we had 10% of the Facebook—
I've only got a small amount of time.
I want to answer your question to the best of my ability, Congressman. And if we had 10% of our user base, which is 200 million people, using a Calibra wallet, we would be the same size of many other non-bank payments wallets around the world, including here in the U.S., including another one that is part of the association.
Let me reclaim my time. You're not answering my question because even banks, anybody that's holding money would be considered a bank. Well, let me ask this. Do you agree that, define simply, an organization that holds deposits and makes loans is a bank? Similarly, banks in the past did issue their own currency or IOUs and clear their payments. Finally, some banks are run as nonprofit organizations or cooperatives. Therefore, both Facebook and Libra organizations planning to establish bank holding companies with full organization and capital structure we require to protect the global financial system from systemic risks and systemic collapse.
Congressman, we will not engage in banking services. We will focus on payments.
Well, you're taking people's money, right? And you're holding their money, correct?
The same way that you have Venmo and PayPal and Square Cash and a number of other payment companies.
So what you're telling me is you're not going to organize as a bank. You didn't answer my first question, which would put you under the regulations of FSOC and others so that we can make sure that there's no systemic risk here because of what you're doing in your size that could bring down the entire federal government, the entire financial services industry. But let me ask you one more. I got 40. In Dodd-Frank, we established the CFPB to serve as a financial regulator focused specifically on the best interests of consumers. Do you believe that the CFPB currently has authority over both the Libra organization and the Facebook Libra wallet? And why did you not conclude, do you think the CFPB have jurisdiction?
Congressman, we're engaged in conversation with all FSOC agencies, including CFPB, and it is not for me to decide who has appropriate oversights. But
So why didn't you did not include compliance with CFPB in your prepared testimony?
Congressman, this is because we're currently engaged with all of these agencies, and I wanted to share where we were right now at this point in time with the knowledge we have at this time. But we will have a more complete outreach by the time we are ready for launch, because we're going to take the time to get this right.
Clarification, I understand that you're absolutely opposed to FSOC's oversight, and that you don't think they should be allowed to designate you as a SIFI. Is that right?
Chairwoman, I'm not opposed to any regulation, and we have had conversations with FSOC.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll move on to the next person. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Lukemeyer, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over here, Mr. Marcus, thank you. You know, you made a statement a while ago that you said that the current system is not working. And it concerns me, because I think the current system is working. It's not working as efficiently maybe as you'd like it to see that it works. But I think, you know, the system right now works because it's kind of like traffic control. You know, if you're on a country road and you have, you know, like 5 cars a day through an intersection, you don't need traffic control, and you can go wherever you want to do, and it doesn't cost you any time to go through an intersection. If you've got an intersection that's got 30,000 cars a day going through it, you need some traffic control to go through there to protect people, for safety purposes, as to be able to transact, their ability to go through that thing in an efficient way. And I think, you know, you're talking about the size and scope of money transactions, and yeah, it costs a little bit of money right now to be able to transfer money around the world, but that's because of safety and security concerns, as well as the mechanisms that are in place to be able to do that. I think what you're trying to do is take away some of those costs, but we're concerned about the safety and transactional transparency of what's going on here. So the system is working, but you'd like to improve it, is what I think you meant to say a while ago. Is that right?
Congressman, first, I really believe that the system is not working for way too many people right now. And I don't believe that the reason the people who earn less and who have less pay more is because of the regulation and having KYC and AML. I believe we can do that at a much lower cost.
Okay.
I believe that technology can lower costs.
What you just said, though, is you agree the system is working, and just not working as efficiently as you like to see it. Well, so I accept that. Something else you said a minute ago, a while ago, you said that you want to offer more financial services as you go down the road. And just a minute ago, you said you want to offer no banking services. So which one is it? Are you going to have deposits down the road that you pay interest on? Are you going to take deposits at all? Are you going to have lending that you're going to be doing to some of the customers? What kind of financial services or banking services are you intending to grow into?
Congressman, it's too early, but if we are to engage in those services, we will partner with existing banks and financial institutions the same way that other payments companies have done it. And I'm talking here exclusively about the Calibra wallet, and I think, you know, I need to be precise here.
Okay, with regards to the specific assets that you're going to hold in the reserve, who puts the money in, who puts the assets in to begin with, who owns those assets, what do you do with any dividends or interest or any returns on those investments that you make, who shares in those profits?
Congressman, the way the reserve is built is if consumers buy into Libra, the fiat money they use to buy Libra ends up in the reserve and is actually custodied with large banks, or potentially a better form of custody, even depending on the outcome of some of the conversations we're having with the G7 working group and the recommendations that they will come. with. And so the reserve is always proportional to the number of Libra coins in circulation. And if the reserve generates a return, it will be used for two things. Number one, to pay for the association and the operation of the whole Libra network. And number two, to return some of the investment back to original investors and backers of the system that will put a lot of resources to get it off the ground.
You know, one of the things that, as we look at this, you know, if I have a business and I'm trying to sell, you know, 1,000 widgets to some company in France, and I want to use the Libra system to be able to facilitate this, when I get done with this transaction, I have an income off that, and so I have to report that to the IRS. So is there a cost to change back from the Libra to the dollars so that I then can explain to the IRS the kind of transaction and kind of you know, money I'm earned off this transaction? Is there a fee for doing that when you transfer it back from Libras to dollars?
Congressman, there will be probably small fees because there will be agents and exchanges that will be involved in the process of converting fiat into Libra and back to fiat. But from an IRS and tax standpoint, as far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, we will have the proper tools built into the product so that people can report their taxes.
Okay, my time is up. Thank you.
The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Marcus, over here, this direction, this way. All right. Now, I've listened very attentively to your testimony and to the response of several of my colleagues' questions here, Ms. Waters, even Mr. McHenry, and you keep mentioning your white paper as a defense to the answer to their questions. But I want to call your attention to the fact that neither your white paper nor your subsequent Facebook posts offered any concrete details as to how you plan to implement or enforce strong anti-money laundering, how you plan to enforce Know Your Customer protections, and most importantly, to ensure, that's what all of us are concerned about, the safety of our financial system. So right now, tell us, what specifically, don't say the white paper, what are you going to do? What do you see as the responsibilities of Libra to combat anti-money laundering, to protect our financial system? Could you tell us right now? Just point it.
Yes, Congressman. Two parts to that answer. First, at the Libra Association itself. Libra Association will be based in Switzerland, but will still register with FinCEN, and as a result, we'll have an AML program, and we'll have guidelines for all the members to enforce the right KYC standards, AML, CFT programs. As far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, for every account opened, we will ensure that everyone KYCs appropriately with government-issued ID, and we'll have very strong AML programs.
Okay, but what about this, Mr. Marcus? Currently, the full responsibility to file suspicious activity reports are on our banks or other money service businesses, which law enforcement uses to investigate and prosecute criminal terrorists. And in your July post, you spoke only of the ability for these law enforcement and regulators to conduct their own analysis of off-the-chain activity. So, do you feel that this represents a shift away from Libra's own responsibility to monitor and enforce anti-money laundering or customer protections?
No, Congressman. The reason I wrote this is that the approach that Libra is taking is using a blockchain And blockchain gives additional visibility to law enforcement and regulators compared to the current system to conduct their own investigations instead of solely depending on banks or regulated entities self-reporting. But that doesn't mean that we on the Calibra wallet side and all of the other members operating on top of this network will not have very strong AML programs and will not file suspicious activity reports.
All right, so now you're marketing this currency as a new entity to financial services. And with that will surely come new and innovative methods of committing financial crimes. What you bring is new. Criminals out there are going to invent ways to deal with it. So let me ask you, what are you anticipating as some of the new ways that criminals may attempt to export and exploit Libra for illicit use? And how are you combating to do this? I mean, you're planning something new, but you also got to have the ability to be able to not just look down the road, but be able to look around corners to see what that criminal has in store for us. What say you?
Couldn't agree more with you, Congressman, and I believe that we can improve on the current system because we have a chance this time around to think through the way that the network is designed, the way that the on and off ramps are properly regulated with proper KYC controls, the proper way to monitor activity and report it with new technologies, and I think that this system might be potentially better on these fronts.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Huizinga, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and there is so much in so little time. I'm going to try to go through and get to some new territory. I was not planning on doing this, but you had used the term fiat currency a couple of times, and thought I knew what that meant, and it seemed a little odd that you were using it in the way that that you were, and so I went to Wikipedia. Fiat money is a currency without intrinsic value that has been established as money. Fiat money does not have use value and has value only because a government maintains its value or because parties engage in exchange to agree on its value. Wikipedia might need to update its definition a little bit because we see that, that people are using cryptocurrencies with no backing. And I am curious, why do you feel the need to have a reserve? Because it strikes me as you're using a fiat currency to create a fiat currency and to have a reserve of that.
Congressman, the reason we have a reserve is that we believe that to create a high-quality payment tool, we need that digital currency to be very stable. And as we've seen with a number of other currencies out there, digital currencies, they're very volatile, and as a result, they are not very good medium of exchange or payment tools.
So it's a trust issue.
No, Congressman. It's a stability issue. It's an inherent
I guess stability and trust.
that good money has, which is, you know, if it's stable, then it's good money. If it's not, then it's not.
But couldn't your stability be influenced by people's trust levels of the currency?
Yes and no. So, in other words, the way that
You fit perfectly into Washington with both a yes and a no,
it's
without
a subtle-
hesitation.
it's
Okay. It does strike me, though, as a little bit as many non-banked and underbanked, as you have said, is one of the goals of trying to get in it, get them involved in the financial space. Oftentimes, they are not in that space because they have a distrust of financial institutions, and it doesn't take anyone much time to find some well-publicized issues of trust with a number of the companies that are involved in Calibra, and so I'm not sure exactly how you're going to address this, but let me get back to the regulatory implications of this. I had the pleasure of being the chair of the Monetary Policy and Trade Subcommittee at one point, as well as the Capital Markets Subcommittee, and I'm the ranking member now on that. And as I've always said, as we've been looking at these crypto assets, cryptocurrencies, and as the ranking member had asked, is it a security, is it an exchange-traded product? What exactly is this? Is it fish or fowl? And it seems that it's more of a platypus to me, that it kind of evolves in its different parts. And I'm curious, are you able to actually maintain the core and essence of a cryptocurrency and asset if you're really under all this regulation?
We believe we can, Congressman, because we believe that in order for any form of digital currency and payment system to reach mass adoption,
So
it
would
needs
you
to be
like to see
regulated.
all of the other crypto assets and cryptocurrencies under the exact same regulation that you are, or are you trying to create and carve out this new product?
Congressman, I can't speak for other crypto assets.
Well, certainly you must have some thoughts on
that.
that, because if you're looking at it going, well, that's not working for them, otherwise, why would you be coming and asking for this regulatory burden?
Because we believe that this is a digital currency. If you compare it to other digital currencies or cryptocurrencies, it serves a different purpose. This one is to serve a purpose of payment. It's a payment tool. And as a result, when it reaches so many people, we believe that appropriate regulation and oversight is required.
So as we were having a little confab up here, and my friend French Hill said, you might be the equivalent of American Express traveler's checks of days of old.
I don't think of it that way, Congressman, but
Okay. Well, yeah, for the lower dais and the staff, those were things, they were actually paper, and you carried them with you. You bought them at a bank, right? You actually put in a fiat currency in towards it. But, all right. There's my time has dwindled, I'm sorry. We've got a lot, and I have one last quick thing, which is, the chair had asserted that you had not been in contact with FINMA, with the Swiss. Is that true or not true? Because you had said earlier that you have.
Congressman, we have been in touch with FINMA. The other agency was the privacy agency that we have not reached out to, but FINMA we have had continuous engagement with.
And I'll be following up with some written questions, so thank you.
The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Perlmutter, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I'm going to kind of take off where Mr. Huizinga just left off, just to help me understand the deal. So I have $5. I go and I buy 1 token of Libra for $5. You take that $5, and what do you do with it?
Congressman, the $5 you would use to buy Libra would end up being in the reserve. And so in the current contemplated basket, it would mean that $2.50 will be in the reserve, and another $2.50 of your dollars will be in a basket of euro, pound, yen, et cetera, in the reserve. And as a result, because the reserve is 1 for 1, your Libra unit of value will always be backed by the same value in the reserve at all times, guaranteeing stability and low volatility.
And that reserve is in the cloud, that reserve is in a bank, that reserve is where?
That reserve is custodied with very large global banks that provide custodial services to a number of companies. But this is something that we're also in discussions with the G7 working group to ensure that there's proper regulatory oversight in how the reserve is managed and how it's custodied as well.
All right, so we've got this medium, this currency of some sort called Libra, and now it's half here, half there. I want to use it. I want to buy something in Paraguay. So, which if I were using dollars was going to cost me $4. So how do I do that? Do I then go to Calibra? And Calibra is like my credit card, and it wires 4/5 of a token of a Libra to Paraguay?
Congressman, you would use any of the wallets, Calibra being one of them, to transfer the money that you wanted to transfer to that other country. And the way it would work is the same way that you would use any payment apps here in the U.S. like Venmo or PayPal.
So it's a wiring system, more or less, except that I'm using Libra. I mean, Calibra is a wiring system. I mean, it's just Venmo, you know, I Venmo my daughter, 20 bucks. Okay, it's just done, it's wired, it's over. I mean, I could have gone to the bank and they could have wired it to her, but I use Venmo.
It's very similar to your experience on Venmo, Congressman.
See, I think what we're struggling with is, what are you? I mean, you're a medium, you're an intermediary, you're facilitating financial transactions. And it isn't as if we haven't had problems with that in the history of the world. You got a money changer in the process, turning my buck into a Libra to a euro. So that's biblical. You've got, you know, I mean, the transaction is something we've had from the beginning of time. But it's a faster kind of wiring and more immediate transaction. Am I mistaken in that?
No, Congressman. It's also much lower cost for the people who end up needing it the most.
And I appreciate that. I mean, but for us, you know, we've seen banks fail. You know, we had the old saying, what's good for GM is good for America. And they had to go through a Chapter 11 back in the recession. You know, I don't think that'll happen to Facebook or whoever's backing this whole process. But it's possible. It's certainly possible. And so our responsibility is to your depositors or the people that buy these tokens or that use your credit card system. And so we're trying to figure out what kinds of regulations. And I think you're getting really good questions from both sides of the aisle because we all have this same question for you. And that's the resistance you're feeling because we think you're a bank, but you're not quite like a bank. And if you're a bank, we regulate the heck out of you because we've seen a lot of people lose money where there hasn't been regulation. So that's the resistance that I feel. I want to support your innovation. I want to support the efficiency that you people believe you're bringing to the table. But I also don't want anybody getting hurt here.
Congressman, we're completely aligned on that. We don't want anyone hurt, and we want the proper regulatory oversight, and this is why we have announced our plans very early, and we're here and engaging with all of the regulatory bodies here in the U.S. and around the world to ensure that we have the right regulatory framework and oversight, and we address all the concerns that were raised today, yesterday, and that were raised by Chairman Powell and others.
Thank you for your testimony.
The gentleman from Wisconsin's Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Marcus, how are you doing? I got to tell you, this is absolutely brilliant, innovative, creative, and to come from Facebook and to leverage your network is pretty amazing. I was shocked at how bright it was. Not that you guys aren't bright. But quickly, who gets to use Calibra and Libra?
So anyone that can open a Calibra account, go through KYC in countries where we can operate.
You know, this is a $20 bill. Do you know who can use a $20 bill?
Yes, Congressman.
Who can use it? Or who can, maybe better question, who can't use a $20 bill?
I believe the answer to your question is anyone.
Everybody can use a $20 bill. This $20 bill doesn't discriminate on anything. You could be a murderer, you can say horrible things, you can say great things. This $20 bill can be used by every single person that possesses it. With regard to your network, can Milo Yiannopoulos or Louis Farrakhan use Libra?
Congressman.
And I bring that up because, you know, both those two individuals have been banned from Facebook.
Congressman, first, I want to say that...
No, simple question. Come, this,
no, but
give me, we only have 5 minutes. You got to answer a question so we can do the best job in vetting what you want to do.
I know, but we must be thoughtful about those issues, Congressman, so I'm trying to respond appropriately. So, you know, on one side, I just want to